The person who becomes truly free from a narcissist's control is not the one who fights harder, but the one who transforms internally by rebuilding boundaries, embracing their authentic self, accepting their own strength, and no longer allowing guilt, shame, or the need to be liked to control their choices, making the narcissist's manipulation powerless because there is nothing left for them to exploit. This part of the process is often the hardest because it requires breaking your own self-image. You've probably spent years building an identity around being the bigger person, the one who forgives, the one who understands. The narcissist counts on that identity. They know you'll set yourself on fire before you'll risk looking mean. The survivor breaks this by reclaiming conscious aggression. Not the reactive, toddler-like rage the narcissist throws around, but a cold, clean, upright energy that rises from your gut to protect the core of who you are. It's the energy that lets you look a manipulator in the eye and say no without a single tremor of guilt. Many people hesitate to tap into this because they're afraid that touching their own rage will turn them into the abuser. That fear is misplaced. There's a huge difference between being possessed by the shadow and integrating it. The narcissist is possessed, a puppet to their own impulses, reacting to every slight and every craving with no filter at all. The integrated survivor, on the other hand, keeps the shadow on a leash. They know they're capable of cutting the narcissist deeply with words, of exposing them with the truth, of walking away when it's needed most. But they choose their actions on purpose. Knowing you could hurt the other person if you wanted to is what removes the fear. You're no longer just prey because you've realized you're also a predator, one who simply chooses to stay in the light. When you integrate your shadow, you take back the parts of yourself you'd given away, your authority, your right to be difficult, your right to be selfish with your own time and energy. It's that exact moment, after years of walking on eggshells, when you stop shrinking from their explosive temper, because you've connected with something in yourself that's older and deeper than their tantrums. You realize you're no longer afraid of their anger, because you found a rage of your own that outdates theirs entirely. In that split second, you don't need to yell or fight. You just look at them with an unnerving kind of calm, knowing you're not trapped in the room with them. They're trapped in the room with you. That shift in energy is unmistakable. The narcissist, operating largely on instinct, senses it immediately. They can tell the fear is gone, replaced by something dormant but dangerous. This kind of integration is the ultimate cure for the weapon of shame. The narcissist controls you by shaming your perceived flaws, calling you selfish, ungrateful, crazy, cold. Those labels only sting if you're still pretending to be flawless. If you're hiding your own self-interest in your own shadow, the accusation stings because it exposes something you've been keeping secret even from yourself. But the survivor has already done the work of auditing their own soul. They've looked in the mirror and said, yes, sometimes I am selfish. Sometimes I am cold. I'm a human being with the full range of traits that come with that. When the narcissist tries to use those accusations as weapons, they just bounce off armor built from self-knowledge. You can't shame someone who's already made peace with their own darkness. The survivor also reclaims a repressed brilliance and strength that usually sits right next to the darker traits in the shadow. Often the narcissist doesn't target you just because you're weak, but because you're powerful and haven't realized it yet. You've buried your own authority, your competence, your presence, to avoid making others feel small. The narcissist picks up that discarded crown and wears it themselves, playing superior and grand. When you integrate the shadow, you take that crown back. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into a room. You stop apologizing for your own intelligence or intuition. You realize your light was never meant to be dimmed to make room for someone else's blindness. This kind of internal restructuring creates a genuinely formidable presence. You become weightier in a psychic sense. You're no longer a wisp of smoke. The narcissist's emotional storms can blow around at will. You become something solid. When they throw a projection at you, it doesn't stick anymore. It hits a wall and slides off. This is what Jung called wholeness, and wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means the internal civil war has ended. Your conscious self and your shadow have signed a truce and turned their combined force outward toward the world instead of at each other. A narcissist, internally fractured and forever at war with themselves, can't stand up against a unified psyche. They'll probe the perimeter, they'll try the old triggers, but they'll find the buttons they used to press have simply been disconnected. To understand the exact moment a victim turns into a survivor, you need to look at the invisible economy running underneath every interaction with a narcissist. Jung saw the psyche not as a static thing, but as a dynamic system of energy. He treated attention, emotion, and interest as a kind of life force. a valuable currency we spend on the people and ideas that matter most to us. In a healthy relationship, that currency flows in both directions. You give care, you get care back. You give attention, you receive understanding in return. It's reciprocal, and it enriches both people. Eventually, though, the survivor comes to a harsh realization. A relationship with a narcissist was never an exchange, it was an extraction. The narcissist functions like a psychological black hole because they lack any real connection to their own center, what Jung would call the self. They can't generate their own sense of worth or even their own sense of existing. They're internally hollow, a beautifully built mask stretched over emptiness. To survive that emptiness, they have to constantly consume other people's life force just to prove to themselves that they're real. That's why their hunger for attention never has a bottom. It isn't a want, it's a survival mechanism. They're feeding on your emotional reactions to fill a hole that never closes. Most people can't survive this dynamic because they fundamentally misjudge what actually counts as food for a narcissist. We tend to assume only love, praise, and adoration are what they crave. But for something starving, any food beats no food at all. The narcissist doesn't care whether the energy you offer is positive or negative, only that it's intense. Scream at them in frustration, and you've fed them. Spend hours crafting a long text explaining exactly how their behavior hurt you, and you've fed them. Cry, beg, or defend your character against their accusations, and you've served them a feast of high-voltage emotion. You've confirmed, once again, that they're the sun your emotional world orbits around. The survivor is the person who goes through a radical shift in this internal economy. They realize they've been bankrupting their own soul just to keep a predator alive. The real turning point comes when they master something you might call the psychic void. This isn't the same as the silent treatment, which is usually just another manipulative game meant to provoke a reaction. The psychic void is a total, one-sided withdrawal of investment. It's the act of severing the energetic thread connecting your gut to theirs. It's a genuine internal stop to caring in the way you used to. That process starts with letting go of the urge to be understood. For years, maybe you operated under the belief that if you could just explain yourself clearly enough, find exactly the right words to describe your pain, the narcissist would finally have some kind of epiphany and change. You believed the conflict was all a misunderstanding. The survivor accepts the harsher truth. There was never a misunderstanding. The narcissist understands you perfectly. They simply don't care. In fact, your distress benefits them. Once that realization sets in, the survivor stops explaining. They stop justifying their choices. They stop arguing against false narratives. They stop defending their own version of reality. The moment you drop those 4 defensive habits, justifying, arguing, defending, explaining, you accidentally create a terrifying kind of silence. You're no longer holding up your end of the tennis match. The narcissist serves a ball of chaos expecting you to hit it back with some kind of defense, but instead you let it sail past you into nothing. You don't move, you don't react. You stand at the center of your own life, unmoved and unresponsive to their provocation. That withdrawal creates a vacuum in the relationship. Nature might hate a vacuum, but a narcissist fears it more than death itself. When you pull your energy back, you stop being the mirror that reflects their false, inflated self-image. Instead, you become a still, dark pool of water. When they look at you, they no longer see the reaction they're fishing for. They see nothing. And in that nothing, they're forced to face the one thing they've spent their whole life running from, their own inner emptiness. The psychological effect of this withdrawal on the narcissist is huge. It fractures their false sense of self. Without your emotional feedback loop telling them who they are, they start to unravel. That's exactly why the moment you start pulling away is often the most dangerous moment. They'll panic, they'll escalate, they'll switch rapidly between aggression and charm, hunting for whichever button still works. They're like someone frantically shaking a vending machine that already swallowed their coins but won't give up the product. But by now the survivor has entered a state of active observation. They're no longer participating in the drama, they're watching it unfold. That shift from participant to witness is the actual key to becoming immune. When the narcissist throws a tantrum, the survivor doesn't feel fear or guilt anymore. They feel a kind of detached curiosity. They observe the behavior the way you'd study a specimen under glass. Now they're trying guilt, now they're trying intimidation. By naming the tactic internally, the survivor strips it of its power. The spell only works while the victim stays unconscious of it. The moment you become aware of the game, you can no longer be played by it. Holding this psychic void takes serious discipline. It means feeling the urge to correct a lie about you and choosing silence instead. It means letting a false accusation float in the air without rushing to fix it. It means watching the narcissist try to bait you into a fight and simply refusing to pick up the sword. It's a form of energy conservation, redirecting the massive amount of life force you used to spend managing their moods, predicting their reactions, and recovering from their behavior, and putting it back into your own system. As you reclaim that energy, you start feeling stronger, clearer, more alive. Meanwhile, as the narcissist loses access to your energy, they grow desperate and depleted. They might try smearing your name to get some kind of reaction. They might try to provoke jealousy. But the survivor stays in the void. They understand that any response at all, even a negative one, is re-engaging with the parasite. The only real win is denying it a host entirely. This creates a mirror effect the manipulator can't tolerate. Without your emotional noise to feed on, the narcissist is left alone with their own thoughts. The projection they throw at you hits the void and bounces right back to where it came from. If they accuse you of being angry while you sit there in total calm, that accusation reflects their own hidden rage back at them. If they call you untrustworthy while you know your own integrity, that accusation reveals their own dishonest nature instead. You become a surface of pure truth simply by refusing to ripple. Eventually, the narcissist hits what you might call an extinction burst, one final desperate explosion of behavior before they give up entirely. The survivor sees this coming. They stand firm inside the void, watching the fireworks without flinching. Understanding this outburst isn't a sign of the narcissist's power, it's proof of their powerlessness. They're screaming at a ghost. The version of you they thought they controlled is gone, replaced by someone sovereign, guarding their own energy with the same ferocity a dragon guards gold. And the beautiful part is, this state requires no aggression at all. You don't need to fight the narcissist to beat them. You just need to starve them. By taking away your attention, you take away their oxygen. Eventually, they're forced to move on and find a new source of supply, leaving you with the silence and peace you fought so hard to earn. This is the real victory, not destroying an enemy, but realizing the enemy is irrelevant to your existence. You've withdrawn your consent to be haunted. You've closed the account. Jung was deeply drawn to the old practice of alchemy, not because he believed you could literally turn lead into gold, but because he saw it as a perfect metaphor for psychological growth. He understood the human soul, much like a piece of metal, has to be exposed to intense heat and pressure before it can be purified. In this light, a relationship with a narcissist isn't just a stroke of bad luck, it's a crucible. The toxic behavior, the confusion, the crushing weight of the trauma, all of that is the lead. Most people look at that lead and see only damage, wasted years, lost innocence, a scar carved into their history. But the specific kind of person who truly survives, who actually transcends the experience, becomes something like a psychological alchemist. They're the ones who learn how to throw that lead into the fire of their own awareness and turn it into gold. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to bridge two opposing forces, light and dark, victim and survivor, love and betrayal, and create a third, higher state out of the tension between them. The survivor doesn't just heal in the sense of going back to who they were before the abuse. Going back isn't even possible because the person they were before was the person susceptible to a narcissist in the first place. The goal was never restoration, it's evolution. The survivor uses the destruction of their old self as the foundation for building a new self that can't be broken the same way again. This process starts with what alchemists used to call the blackening, the phase of depression, disorientation, and despair that usually follows finally seeing the narcissist for who they really are. It's a descent underground. The survivor feels like their whole reality has been burned to the ground. The beliefs they held about love, about the basic goodness of people, about their own judgment, all of it gets scorched away. This phase is frightening, but Jung argued it's completely necessary. The ego, the part of you concerned with appearances and polite fictions, has to break down before something deeper can rise up. The narcissist, in their cruelty, becomes the unwitting agent of that demolition. They burn down the house of your old assumptions. Jung believed the ultimate goal of a human life wasn't happiness, which comes and goes, but wholeness. The alchemical process is the road to that wholeness. It's the integration of your scars and your strengths, your naive past and your wiser present. The survivor looks back at what happened, not with any gratitude toward the abuser, but with real respect for their own capacity to endure and transform. They come to see that the fire didn't burn them, it burned away everything that was never really them to begin with. What's left is the gold, pure, authentic, and entirely their own. The final stop on the survivor's journey is a state Jung called individuation. It's often misread as simply becoming independent or self-confident, but in the context of surviving a narcissist, it means something far more radical, becoming a single unified being, someone who can no longer be split against themselves. To understand why this state acts as the ultimate shield, you have to realize that a narcissist's primary weapon is division. They divide you from your friends. They divide you from your family. But most importantly, they divide you from your own intuition, driving a wedge between what you feel and what you think until you're stuck in a constant internal civil war. The individuated person is someone in whom that war has finally ended. They've reached a kind of psychological unity nothing can get through. The survivor who reaches this point has fundamentally relocated the seat of their own authority, moving it from the outside world into their own internal one. This is the decisive shift that makes the narcissist irrelevant. For most people, that seat of authority sits somewhere outside themselves. We look to others to tell us whether we're good, whether we're worthy, whether our read on reality is accurate. We're trained from childhood to seek approval from parents, teachers, and society at large. The narcissist takes full advantage of that training by stepping into the role of ultimate judge and jury over your reality. They tell you what's true, and because your authority still lives outside yourself, you believe them. The survivor is the type of person who, through the sheer agony of the abuse, comes to see that this outside dependency is itself the trap. Slowly, painfully, deliberately, they move that authority back inside their own chest. This is the birth of sovereignty. When you're sovereign, you don't ask the narcissist whether you're a good person. You already know who you are. You don't ask whether something really happened. You know what you saw. You don't ask whether you're worthy of love. You feel your own worth as something obvious and already settled. That internal certainty acts like a force field. When the narcissist tries gaslighting a sovereign person, insisting something never happened or that they're imagining things, the sovereign person doesn't doubt their own mind. They just quietly notice the narcissist is lying. The gaslighting fails mechanically because there's no lingering doubt left for it to attach to. That shift changes the entire gravitational pull of the relationship. In the beginning, the narcissist was the sun, and you were a planet orbiting them, dependent on their warmth and light. If they shone on you, you felt alive. If they turned away, you froze. Sovereignty means becoming your own sun. You generate your own gravity, your own light, your own warmth. You're no longer orbiting them. You're standing at your own center. That's terrifying for a narcissist because you can't control a star, only satellites. The moment you stop orbiting them, they feel a loss of control that cuts right to the core of their disorder. They might try to yank you back with frantic emotional displays, but the physics of the relationship have already changed for good. You've simply got too much mass to be pulled out of your own orbit now. The individuated survivor also builds a deep immunity to what Jung called the God image projection. He observed that humans have an innate need to worship something, to find some ultimate source of meaning and safety. In a toxic relationship, the victim unconsciously projects that God image onto the narcissist. We treat them as though they're all powerful, as if their opinion defines our very existence, as if a single look from them could make or break our whole day. Individuation means taking that projection back. The survivor realizes no human being is a god, least of all, someone who can't even manage their own emotions. They strip the narcissist of that false divine status and finally see them for what they actually are, a flawed, wounded, limited person. Once you strip away that illusion, the narcissist visibly shrinks. You might literally witness this happen, a moment where someone who once seemed so imposing and terrifying suddenly looks small, petty, almost ridiculous. Their rage stops looking like divine wrath and starts looking like a child's tantrum. Their silence stops feeling like cosmic judgment and starts feeling like a sulk. This humanizing of the abuser is what kills the control dynamic for good. You can't be intimidated by someone you pity. You can't be controlled by someone you see as less mature than you are. The survivor looks at the narcissist and simply thinks, this person has nothing left to offer me. That realization opens up a whole new capacity for solitude. The narcissist can't stand being alone, because they have no inner self to keep them company. Left alone in a room, they psychologically stop existing, which is exactly why they're constantly hunting for supply. The survivor, on the other hand, uses this journey of individuation to build a rich inner life. They cultivate a relationship with themselves that's genuinely nurturing and interesting. They learn to actually enjoy their own company. That ability to be at peace in solitude is a kind of superpower. It makes you essentially blackmail proof. A narcissist's ultimate threat is usually abandonment. I'll leave you, I'll find someone else, you'll end up alone. Those threats only land on someone terrified of being with themselves. To a sovereign survivor, the threat of being left alone isn't a threat at all. It's a promise of peace. If the narcissist threatens to walk out, the survivor just thinks, okay, no panic, no scrambling to fix things, no begging. That indifference completely shatters the narcissist's leverage. You can't threaten someone with starvation if they've already planted a garden in their own backyard. The survivor has done exactly that. They've built their own interests, their own connection to something bigger than themselves, their own creative pursuits, their own vision for their life. They're self-sustaining. That self-sufficiency means any relationship they choose from here on out is built on desire, not need. They're with someone because they want to be, not because they'd collapse without them. On top of that, the individuated person develops a kind of automatic psychic immune system. In the past, you might have been drawn to intensity, love bombing, grand romantic gestures. You might have mistaken obsession for passion. But as you individuate, your taste actually changes. You start craving authenticity, stability, and reciprocity instead. When you encounter someone performing a persona, someone too charming, too perfect, too intense, your gut no longer reads it as attraction. It reads as repulsion. You feel a kind of physical unease, or maybe just deep boredom. Jung would say your instincts have been restored. You can smell the fakeness. That repulsion functions as a built-in safety mechanism, making sure you never fall into the same trap twice. You're not avoiding these people purely out of fear anymore. You're avoiding them because there's simply no resonance left. You're not vibrating at the same frequency. The narcissist wants drama. You want peace. The narcissist wants dominance. You want partnership. The narcissist wants a fan. You want an equal. There's no hook left for them to grab onto. It's like trying to stick a magnet to a piece of wood. The forces just don't match anymore. The last piece of this sovereignty is fully letting go of the need for closure. Someone who hasn't individuated often stays stuck for years, waiting for the narcissist to apologize, to admit what they did, to give the relationship some kind of proper ending, essentially waiting for the narcissist to write the final page of the story. The sovereign survivor comes to realize the narcissist is incapable of writing that page. Waiting for closure from someone living inside their own delusion is, in a sense, a kind of madness. So the survivor writes the ending themselves. They validate their own experience. They grant themselves the closure they need. They accept that they'll probably remain the villain in the narcissist's version of events forever, and they make peace with that. They let go of the need to control the narrative and pour their focus entirely into living their own truth instead. This state of being is genuinely dangerous to a narcissist because it makes them powerless. A narcissist knows how to deal with an enemy. They can fight, smear, argue. What they can't deal with is a person who has simply outgrown them, someone who looks at them and sees a stranger. The survivor's indifference becomes the ultimate mirror, reflecting the narcissist's own insignificance right back at them. It isn't an act of revenge, it's an act of transcendence. The survivor has climbed a mountain the narcissist refuses to even attempt, and from that higher vantage point, the games being played down in the valley look small and pointless. At its core, individuation is the realization that you're the main character of your own life. You're not a supporting player in someone else's dysfunction. You have a destiny only you can fulfill. The narcissist turns out to have been a test, a dragon guarding the gate to your own potential. By surviving them, by integrating your shadow, by claiming your sovereignty, you've slain that dragon. You've taken the gold, which was always your own soul, and now you're free to use it. You walk away, not as a victim who barely escaped, but as a sovereign person who's conquered some of the hardest terrain the human mind has to offer. You're whole, you're real, and you're free. The road from victim to survivor to sovereign isn't an easy one. It's a descent into the depths of your own psyche, a face-to-face confrontation with your shadow, and a fiery transformation of the self. But it's the only road that actually leads to real freedom. The kind of person who survives a narcissist is the one who refuses to stay psychologically a child. They take responsibility for their own consciousness. They integrate their own darkness, take back their projections, and claim their sovereignty. In Jung's view, this whole struggle isn't just a personal misfortune. It's a wake-up call. the narcissist ends up serving as the gatekeeper to your higher self, daring you to become whole. By meeting that challenge, you don't just get past the narcissist, you rise above the level of consciousness where they even operate. You become someone of real substance, depth, and strength. You become the hero of your own story.